Picture this. You are cruising down the highway.
Oh, this is my favorite scenario to think about.
Right? It's the dream. The weather is perfectly clear. The traffic is wonderfully light. And you are sitting behind the wheel of a state-of-the-art self-driving car. You're completely relaxed.
You'd be sipping a coffee.
Exactly. Sipping a coffee, maybe you've got a podcast or, well, a deep dive like this one playing on the stereo, and you are just completely trusting this multi-thousand-dollar array of LiDAR, radar, and cameras that are supposedly navigating the physical world for you.
Supposedly being the key word there.
Yeah, because then, suddenly, out of nowhere, the vehicle violently slams on its brakes. Or, even worse, it swerves erratically into the next lane, right into oncoming traffic.
And you're just sitting there terrified, wondering what happened.
Exactly. And why did it happen? Because its highly advanced, supposedly brilliant vision system confused a perfectly stationary fire engine parked on the shoulder with like an overhead billboard.
Or maybe it interpreted a bizarre shadow cast by a bridge as a massive gaping sinkhole.
Yes. And that isn't just some sci-fi thought experiment.
No, not at all. I mean, that is the exact kind of terrifying, completely unpredictable error that plagues the modern landscape of artificial intelligence. It's the reality of the systems we are deploying right now, today.
Which is just wild to think about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm your host, and today on Decode Deep Dive, we are unpacking this exact crisis of trust and reliability in artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Because, look, you can step out of the car and look at almost any other industry and see the exact same thing happening.
Oh, absolutely. Healthcare is a prime example.
Right. Let's say you step into a hospital. Consider the sheer frustration and, frankly, the immense danger of an AI healthcare system, a system backed by millions of dollars of corporate research, confidently recommending a treatment plan for a patient that a first-year medical student would instantly flag as potentially lethal.
It's chilling. We are literally handing over the keys to our lives, to our health, our transportation, to machines.
But these machines keep failing us. And the thing is, they don't fail in ways that humans fail.
Yeah.
They fail in bizarre, unpredictable, honestly absurd ways.
It's a massive disconnect. I mean, we are living in a world where the technological promises are sky high. We're constantly told we're like right on the brink of artificial general intelligence. But the day-to-day reality of what these systems actually comprehend about the physical world is incredibly brittle.
Brittle, that is the perfect word for it. Today, our mission is to figure out exactly why the systems that are supposed to be driving us around, diagnosing our illnesses, running our lives, keep making such ridiculous mistakes. And, more importantly, how we can actually fix it.
Yeah, and our roadmap for this entire conversation is a truly foundational book. It's called Rebooting AI. Building Artificial Intelligence We Can Trust by Gary Marcus and Ernest Davis.
It's such a good read.
It really is. Marcus is a cognitive scientist, Davis is a computer scientist, and together they've laid out what is arguably the most sobering, scientifically grounded reality check the AI industry has ever received.
And I promise you, by the end of this deep dive, you won't just understand the hidden architecture of why modern AI keeps falling flat on its face. You are going to discover a very specific, actionable framework from the book for how we fundamentally change course.
We're talking about moving away from this brittle data crunching paradigm we're trapped in today and moving toward machines that actually possess something resembling, well, human-like common sense.
Which sounds so simple, but it's the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and you use something like ChatGPT every day, you might be thinking, wait, my AI writes poetry and codes Python for me. How can you say it's brittle? That is the exact illusion we need to break down today.
And to break that illusion, we really need to look at the historical context, because this feeling that we are, just on the brink of superintelligence, it is not a new feeling.
Not at all.
The history of AI is, quite literally, a history of overpromising and underdelivering.
It really is. And it sets the stage for everything we are dealing with today. If you go back to the mid-20th century, like the 1950s and 60s, you had these brilliant pioneers of the field. People like Marvin Minsky, John McCarthy, Herb Simon.
Absolute architects of computer science.
Yeah. And they genuinely, truly believed that artificial intelligence was a problem that could be neatly solved in just a matter of a few decades. In 1967, Marvin Minsky actually wrote that Within a generation, the problem of artificial intelligence will be substantially solved.
A generation. I mean, think about the magnitude of that prediction. He thought we would have human-level flexible intelligence by the 1980s or 90s.
Right.
He was looking at early computers that could solve basic algebra or play rudimentary checkers, and he extrapolated that a linear progression in computing power would naturally just result in a human mind.
And yet, the promises never stopped. They just kept rolling into the next decade and the next.
Yeah, always 20 years away.
Exactly. You fast forward to 2002, Ray Kurzweil, the famous futurist, makes this massive, highly publicized bet that AI is going to surpass native human intelligence by the year 2029.
And look at where we are now. We're creeping right up on 2029.
We are. And even today, people at major AI research institutes are suggesting that artificial general intelligence like human-level adaptable intelligence that can do literally anything a human can do is a serious near-term possibility. It feels like AI is always just over the horizon.
The perpetual carrot on a stick. But it's crucial to understand that these aren't just academic predictions debated in university faculty lounges, right? These are massive corporate promises that drive billions of dollars of investment and impact real-world infrastructure.
Absolutely. The corporate side is huge.
Look at the immense and, frankly, somewhat tragic trajectory of IBM Watson. I'm sure you remember the absolute media frenzy around Watson after it won Jeopardy back in 2011.
Oh, totally. I remember watching that on TV. The media was acting like Watson was the new omniscient supercomputer that was going to solve every problem on Earth. It beat Ken Jennings. It processed millions of Wikipedia pages in seconds. It really looked like the ultimate triumph of machine intelligence over human recall.
Exactly. And IBM leaned into that narrative heavily. They pivoted massive, massive resources to monetize this perceived intelligence. In 2016, they claimed that Watson would revolutionize healthcare.
Which is a bold claim.
Very bold. Their marketing stated that their cognitive systems could understand, reason, learn, and interact. The goal was to have Watson ingest the entire corpus of medical literature, every journal, every study, every textbook, and make diagnostic recommendations that human doctors might miss, because obviously no human can read 1 million pages a second.
Which, if you're just looking at it logically from the outside, sounds amazing. If you have a machine that has basically memorized every medical text ever written, shouldn't it just be a matter of typing in chest pain and getting the perfect diagnosis?
You would think so. But the reality was a staggering letdown. Let's look at what actually happened at the Marburg Center for Rare Diseases in Germany. They partnered with IBM. They tried to use Watson to diagnose complex, rare conditions.
Okay, so a real-world clinical setting.
Exactly. And it failed spectacularly on the absolute basics. A patient presented with severe chest pain. And Watson, this multi-million-dollar state-of-the-art cognitive system, completely missed obvious diagnoses.
Wait, really? What did it miss?
It missed things like a heart attack, angina, a torn aorta, things that a first-year medical student, or honestly a person who just watches medical dramas on TV, would look at and say, chest pain, rule out the heart immediately.
Wait, let's pause here because this is where the mechanics are just so important. How does a machine with that much processing power, a machine that has literally read the entire medical dictionary, miss a basic heart attack? Did they just feed it the wrong textbooks? Or is it a fundamental flaw in how it processes information?
It's a fundamental flaw in the architecture of its understanding. You see, Watson didn't actually know what a heart is. Wow.
Yeah. It didn't know what pain is. It didn't possess a cognitive model of a human body or life or death or blood circulation. What Watson was doing, brilliantly by the way, but very narrowly, was performing incredibly complex keyword matching and statistical correlations.
So it was just connecting words.
Exactly. It was a highly sophisticated natural language processing search engine. So in this specific clinical case, it saw the prompt for rare diseases and the prompt for chest pain, and its algorithms started fishing through its massive database for esoteric, highly specific textual connections that linked those terms.
It prioritized the rare stuff over the obvious stuff.
Yes. It prioritized the rare aspect because of statistical weighting, entirely missing the foundational reality of the physical situation. A human doctor sees a person in pain and thinks causally, right? Like, what physical mechanism in the chest could cause this pain? Watson just saw a string of text and matched it to other strings of text.
So it's essentially just an incredibly powerful Control-F function.
Pretty much. It doesn't know it's diagnosing a human being. It's just playing a word association game. where the stakes are life and death.
Exactly. And the project at Marburg was quietly shelved after less than 2 years because the performance was deemed totally unacceptable. The gap between the marketing of a reasoning machine and the reality of a statistical word matcher became glaringly obvious the second it hit a real clinical setting.
And Watson isn't an isolated case, is it? We see this cycle of hype and quiet cancellation everywhere in the industry. Look at Facebook's chatbot, M.
Oh, right, him.
Yeah, it was launched in 2015 with this massive media fanfare. It was supposed to be the ultimate digital assistant. It would cater to your every need, booking complex vacations, negotiating with customer service, making dinner reservations, basically being a flawless digital butler.
And 3 years later, quietly canceled.
Exactly. Or look at Waymo, the driverless car company. In 2017, the CEO boasted that they would shortly have completely driverless cars with no safety drivers in them, operating everywhere.
And here we are years later, and while autonomous vehicles operate fine on highly mapped, sunny highways in perfect weather, like out in Phoenix, they still absolutely require safety drivers or remote interventions the moment things get complex.
Right, like a crowded urban street or a construction zone with temporary signs, or, God forbid, a snowstorm.
Snow completely breaks them.
So, if these systems are failing in such basic structural ways, why does the general public still think we are on the verge of the Terminator? Or at least Rosie the robot from the Jetsons. I mean, I open my news feed and I see headlines constantly telling me AI is replacing entire professions tomorrow. The book places a massive amount of blame squarely on how the media exaggerates incremental progress, right?
Oh, the media exaggeration is a crucial piece of this puzzle, but it's fueled by a misunderstanding of what the benchmarks actually measure. We really have to dissect this phenomenon, and looking at the SQUAD reading test is the perfect way to do it.
SQUAD, what does that stand for again?
It stands for the Stanford Question Answering Dataset. It's a major benchmark in natural language processing. A few years ago, Microsoft and Alibaba built programs that achieved a slightly higher score on this test than average human participants did.
And the headlines lost their minds. I remember seeing things like, computers can now read better than humans, and millions of jobs at risk. It sounded like the machines had mastered human language and comprehension.
But when you actually look at the mechanics of the SQUAD test, you realize it is not a test of reading comprehension in any meaningful human sense. It's essentially an exercise in underlining.
Okay, wait, explain that. How can a reading test just be underlining? I mean, when I take a reading comprehension test, I have to synthesize themes, understand character motives, that kind of thing.
Well, think about how SQUAD is structured. The AI is given a paragraph of text, typically pulled from Wikipedia. Then it is asked a question. In the SQUAD dataset, the answer to the question is literally explicitly spelled out as a continuous string of text within that paragraph.
Just right there on the page.
Exactly. So if the paragraph says, the Apollo 11 mission launched on July 16, 1969, and the question asks, when did Apollo 11 launch? The AI doesn't need to understand what a rocket is or what space is or even what a date is.
It just finds the matching words.
Yes. It uses statistical models to map the words in the question to the words in the paragraph, and it extracts the surrounding string of text, July 16, 1969.
Oh, I see. It's like asking, the sky is blue, what color is the sky? The machine just scans for the keywords color and sky and extracts the adjective sitting next to it. That isn't reading. That's just a pattern-matching extraction task. It's finding a needle in a haystack, but it has no idea what a needle is. It just knows the shape of the metal it's supposed to look for.
That's a great analogy. It's finding a shape, not a meaning, which raises the really profound question, what is actual reading? What is comprehension? To demonstrate the massive gap between machine extraction and human understanding, the book uses this thought experiment from cognitive science, often referred to as the Chloe and Alexander example.
Yes, let's walk through that because it perfectly illustrates what happens under the hood of a human brain versus a machine. The story is super short, just a few sentences long. It goes like this. Two children, Chloe and Alexander, went for a walk. They both saw a dog in a tree. Alexander also saw a cat and pointed it out to Chloe. She went to pet the cat.
Very simple. Now, a SQUAD-trained AI can easily answer a question like, who went for a walk? Because the text explicitly contains the string, Chloe and Alexander went for a walk. It extracts the string, it succeeds.
Boom, perfect score. But if you ask the AI, did Chloe see the cat? It fails. Or if you ask, were the children frightened by the cat? It has absolutely no idea, because the answers to those questions aren't explicitly spelled out in the text.
Exactly. There is no sentence that literally says Chloe saw the cat or Chloe was not frightened, but a human 4-year-old child instinctively knows the answers to those questions. Why? Because human comprehension relies on making inferences based on a massive unwritten background knowledge of how the physical and social world operates.
Right. We just know things.
The child knows that if Alexander pointed a physical object out to Chloe and she went to interact with it, she must have seen it with her eyes. And because petting an animal is a sign of affection or curiosity, she obviously wasn't frightened by it.
The human mind just effortlessly fills in those blanks. We bring an entire universe of context to every single sentence we read. Squad-trained AIs cannot answer questions where the answer requires inferring meaning that isn't fully explicit. They have no background universe.
This is exactly why the hype is so misleading. The Facebook Lord of the Rings AI is another hilarious example of this from the book. A few years back, Technology Review ran a headline saying Facebook had built software that could read a synopsis of Lord of the Rings and answer questions about it.
When you hear that, you think, wow, the AI understands narrative structure. It understands the hero's journey. It understands temptation and sacrifice.
Right. You think it's writing a collegiate essay on the One Ring. But then you look at the actual synopsis the AI read. It wasn't the books. It wasn't even the Cliff Notes. It was a synthesized data set explicitly created for AI training. It was literally 4 lines long.
4 lines. What did it say?
It said, Bilbo traveled to the cave. Gollum dropped the ring there. Bilbo took the ring. Frodo journeyed to Mount Doom. Frodo dropped the ring there.
That's the whole synopsis.
That's it. And the questions the AI could answer were strictly location-based tracking. Where is the ring? Where is Frodo? The AI was basically playing a shell game. It could track the physical location of a noun across a 4-line text string.
But if you asked it, why did Frodo drop the ring? Or how did Gollum feel about losing the ring? Or why didn't they just fly the eagles to Mount Doom? Absolute silence. It has zero comprehension of intent, desire, struggle, or consequence. It's tracking nouns, not understanding a story.
Precisely. Tracking nouns is not comprehension.
Okay, so if the media is constantly overhyping these systems, and the underlying technology is essentially just sophisticated text matching or noun tracking, why do we keep filing for it?
Yeah.
Why are we as a society so eager to believe the machines are smarter than they actually are?
Well, because we are biologically hardwired to do so, this is where we cross into the psychological and structural traps that we all fall into. The book talks about how we are facing what can be called the AI chasm. It's this massive, glaring gap between our science fiction ambitions for AI and the sobering current reality of the technology.
The AI chasm, I like that.
Yeah, and this chasm is maintained by 3 distinct, powerful gaps in our judgment and our engineering. Let's break those down.
Yeah, let's do it. The first of these is the Gullibility Gap.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned biological hardwiring. This is rooted in something very profound about human psychology, which psychologists call the fundamental overattribution error.
Yes. Think about human evolution. For millions of years, the only entities we interacted with that exhibited complex responsive behavior were other humans, or at least higher-order animals. Our brains are deeply evolutionarily wired to project intent, intelligence, and understanding onto things that exhibit even slightly human-like behavior. We are hypersocial creatures.
We see faces in the clouds, we name our cars, we get mad at our laptops and think they're angry at us when they freeze. We have this desperate need to find a mind on the other side of an interaction.
Exactly. We project human cognitive states onto machines that possess absolutely none. We assume that because a machine's output looks like something a human would produce, like a coherent sentence or a localized answer, the machine must have used human-like reasoning to produce it. We conflate output with process.
The ultimate historical example of this, and I honestly couldn't believe this when I first read about it in the book, goes all the way back to 1966. The Eliza chatbot.
Eliza,
Yeah.
a class.
Yeah, created by an MIT professor named Joseph Weizenbaum. Eliza was basically a program designed to mimic a Rogerian psychotherapist. You would sit at a typewriter terminal, type a sentence to it, and it would type back.
But we have to understand Eliza's code. Eliza had no understanding of language, no database of human psychology. It used incredibly simple parlor tricks. It was essentially a script that looked for specific keywords and applied syntactic transformations. It matched patterns and echoed your statements back to you as questions.
So if you typed, "I am feeling sad," how did Eliza process that?
It was purely mechanical. The code would scan for the string I am. When it found it, it would trigger a rule to flip I am to why are you, and then append whatever text followed. So it would spit back, why are you feeling sad?
That's so simple.
It really is. If you typed, my mother is annoying, it would trigger on the word mother, which was a heavily weighted keyword in its script, and it would output a canned response like, tell me more about your family.
It's just a script. A very basic paper-thin script. A smart high schooler could code the logic in an afternoon today. But the reaction from people in the 1960s was absolutely mind-blowing. Weizenbaum, the creator, watched in horror as his own staff, his secretary, his students, people who explicitly knew it was just a simple text manipulation program, started pouring their hearts out to it.
They formed emotional bonds with it.
Yes. People would ask him to leave the room so they could have privacy while talking to the machine. They genuinely felt that the machine understood them, that it was empathizing with their problems.
That is the gullibility gap in its purest form. When the machine says, "Tell me more about your family," the human brain instantly attributes a deep, empathetic curiosity to the machine. We do the heavy lifting of giving the machine a soul. And Weizenbaum was so disturbed by this that he spent the rest of his career warning people about the dangers of attributing human understanding to computers.
And while pouring your heart out to a 1960s chatbot is harmless enough, maybe even a little therapeutic, the gullibility gap has deadly consequences in the modern world. We aren't just talking to typewriters anymore. We are putting these systems inside 2-ton vehicles. This brings up the tragic 2016 Tesla autopilot crash discussed in the book.
This is a sobering, really critical example of the gullibility gap meeting physical reality. A driver was using Tesla's autopilot feature on a divided highway in Florida. The system is designed to keep the car in its lane and adjust speed based on traffic ahead.
A pretty standard feature now.
Right. But according to the investigation, the driver trusted the system so implicitly, he had fallen so deeply into the gullibility gap, that he was allegedly watching a Harry Potter movie on a portable DVD player while the car hurtled down the highway at 74 miles per hour.
He attributed human-level situational awareness to a system that was essentially just a glorified lane-keeping and adaptive cruise control algorithm. He assumed the car can see the lane lines, the car can see the car in front of me, therefore the car understands the concept of driving in danger.
Which is a fatal assumption.
And because he trusted it implicitly, he wasn't looking at the road when a white tractor trailer crossed the highway directly in front of him.
Let's break down the mechanics of the failure, because this is vital to understanding the gap. The car's cameras were looking ahead, but a camera doesn't see a truck. A camera registers a matrix of pixels with varying brightness values.
It just sees numbers.
Exactly. It was a bright, sunny day, and the side of the tractor trailer was painted stark white. The vision algorithm was trained to identify vehicles based on specific shapes and contrasts, but presented with a massive flat white surface against a brightly lit sky, the algorithm couldn't find the contrast.
Because it just blended in.
Right. It didn't recognize the shape of the trailer as a vehicle because it didn't look like the rear end of a car, which is what it was historically trained to follow.
So the system just saw a bright sky. It didn't brake. It didn't even slow down. The car drove straight under the trailer, shearing off the roof and killing the driver instantly. The driver projected a human understanding of truck and sky and imminent death onto a machine that only understood pixel contrast.
That is the ultimate tragic cost of the gullibility gap. We assume the machine knows what we know, and we let our guard down. We assume an underlying intelligence that simply isn't there, which leads us perfectly into the second gap in the AI chasm, the illusory progress gap.
Okay, the illusory progress gap. The book defines this as when we mistake progress on easy, closed problems for progress on hard, open problems.
Exactly. This is a critical distinction in computer science, and it explains why we constantly feel like we're on the verge of a breakthrough that never quite arrives. We have to understand the difference between closed systems and open-ended systems. Think about classic AI triumphs, a game of chess or a game of Go. These are perfect examples of closed systems.
Right. The board is a fixed grid. 64 squares for chess, a 19 by 19 grid for Go. The rules have not changed in centuries. And crucially, there is no hidden information. Both players can see every single piece on the board at all times.
There's no chance a random gust of wind is going to blow the pieces off the board, or the opponent is going to suddenly invent a new piece called the Super Knight halfway through the game, or that the board is going to catch on fire. The universe of the game is perfectly contained.
It's a tiny, mathematically perfect universe. Because it is a perfect closed system, and AI can master it through brute force simulation. When DeepMind created AlphaGo to play the board game Go, they used a technique combining neural networks with Monte Carlo tree search. Basically, the AI played millions and millions of games against itself.
Billions of games, really?
Yeah, it generated billions of data points in a perfectly clean, digital simulated environment. Through endless trial and error, moving pieces back and forth at light speed, it learned the optimal statistical move for any board state.
which is an incredible engineering feat. Let's not diminish that. It beat Lisa Dahl, the human world champion. It was a watershed moment in computer science. And when that happens, it makes the headlines, and the general public, and honestly, a lot of tech executives think, wow, Go is a profoundly complex game. If AI can master Go, it can master anything. The human brain is just a matter of time.
But that progress is illusory when you try to apply it to the real world, because the real world is an open system. It is messy, it is unpredictable, it is full of incomplete information, and the rules change constantly. You cannot perfectly simulate the real world.
And if you can't simulate it, you can't use the AlphaGo method of self-play to learn. Let's use a very physical example from the book. Imagine you are a robotics company and you want to train an elder care robot. Its job is to safely lift an elderly patient from a wheelchair and put them into bed.
That's a high-stakes task.
Extremely. Now, if you try to use the AlphaGo method trial and error through millions of repetitions, it is physically and ethically impossible. You cannot run 10 million real-world simulations of lifting a fragile human being, slowly adjusting the robot's torque and grip parameters every time it accidentally drops the patient on the floor or squeezes too hard.
Obviously not. You go to prison. Every data point in the real world costs time, money, and potentially human lives.
And you can't simulate it digitally either. The physics of a human body are too complex. You can't perfectly simulate the friction of different pajamas, the squishiness of different mattresses, the unpredictable ways a human might squirm or tense up, or what happens if a dog runs into the room and bumps the robot. The real world has an infinite number of variables.
The real world just doesn't offer perfect, cheap, infinite simulation data. So achieving mastery in a closed game like Go tells us almost nothing about a machine's ability to navigate the open-ended chaos of the physical world. Mistaking mastery of a closed system for competence in an open system is the illusory progress gap.
And that ties directly, almost inevitably, into the third gap, the robustness gap. This is the false, persistent assumption that just because an AI works some of the time, or in highly controlled environments, simply throwing more data at it will eventually make it work all of the time.
This is what engineers call the 95% to 100% problem. Driving a car is the classic example here again. 95% of driving is incredibly routine. Keep your hands on the wheel, stay in the lines, maintain a constant speed, stop when the light turns red. A machine relying on basic sensors and data can do that easily.
But that last 5%, the extreme outliers, the unpredictable edge cases, that's where human intelligence shines and where narrow AI completely violently breaks down.
Let's compare two driving environments to illustrate this. Take the autonomous vehicles operating in sunny Phoenix, Arizona, versus what a car would face navigating a monsoon in Mumbai. In Phoenix, the roads are wide, the weather is almost always clear, the lane markings are freshly painted and standardized. An AI can log millions of miles without a major incident, gathering huge amounts of data that confirm its algorithms are working.
Which gives the engineers a massive false sense of robustness.
Right, but take that exact same system, trained on millions of miles of perfect Phoenix data, and drop it into a chaotic environment, or just present it with something novel. Imagine a human driver comes up to a construction zone, and there's a police officer standing in the road holding a piece of cardboard with hand-painted letters that says, "Detour Sinkhole."
A human driver reads that sign, instinctively understands what a sinkhole is, a sudden, dangerous absence of road, understands the authority of the police officer holding it, understands that the hand-painted nature of the sign implies an emergency, and dynamically alters their route without hesitation.
We just adapt.
Exactly.
Right.
But an AI trained only on standardized, reflective Department of Transportation highway signs has no database entry for a hand-painted piece of cardboard warning of a geological collapse. To the AI, it is an absolute outlier. It's out of distribution data. And narrow AI, lacking general comprehension, tends to get completely flummoxed by outliers. It might ignore the sign, or it might freeze, or it might try to drive straight through the officer.
The robustness gap is also vividly, and sometimes hilariously, illustrated by visual hallucinations in AI. The book mentions this AI captioning system. This system is designed to look at an image and describe what's in it. And it's powered by a convolutional neural network, which analyzes the image for edges, shapes, and textures.
Right, and in standard situations, it works perfectly. It looks at a stock photo of people in a park and correctly labels it a group of young people playing a game of frisbee.
But then, researchers decided to test its robustness. They took an ordinary no parking sign mounted on a metal pole, but they covered the face of this parking sign in a bunch of random, colorful street art stickers. They showed the image to the AI, The AI looks at this metal sign, processes the visual noise of the stickers, and confidently outputs the caption, a refrigerator filled with lots of food and drinks.
Think about the profound lack of understanding required to make that mistake. Let's break down the mechanics of the hallucination. The neural network is looking for features. It sees the rectangular shape of the sign that triggers the refrigerator weight in its network. It sees the colorful blobs of the stickers, which have the textures and color profiles of fruit, soda cans, and food packaging in its training data. So it statistically correlates a rectangle plus colorful blobs, and it outputs refrigerator with food.
It completely ignores the physical reality of the scene. It ignores that the rectangle is flat, not volumetric. It ignores that it is mounted on a metal pole outside on a sidewalk. It ignores that you don't typically find an open, fully stocked refrigerator bolted to a street corner. It lacks any physical understanding of the world. It's just doing math on pixels.
And it's funny when it's a captioning system hallucinating a refrigerator. It is decidedly not funny if an automated security robot hallocates that a cell phone in a suspect's hand is a handgun because of a glare of light, or if a medical AI hallucinates a tumor because of a smudge on an X-ray lens. So true. But if these blind spots, gullibility, illusory progress, and robustness are so pervasive and honestly so obvious when you look under the hood, why hasn't the industry solved them? Why is everyone still pouring billions of dollars into this? It's because the entire tech industry is hypnotized by one specific technology: deep learning. Let's look at why that specific technology, while powerful, is ultimately a trap for achieving true intelligence.
We really have to talk about the deep learning plateau because we hear the phrase deep learning everywhere. It is the buzzword of the decade. Every startup claims to be powered by it. And, to be completely fair and impartial, we absolutely must give deep learning its due.
Yeah, it's not all bad.
Not at all. Driven by huge data sets like ImageNet, which contains over 15 million meticulously labeled pictures, and incredibly fast parallel hardware like modern GPUs, deep learning has achieved things that genuinely seemed impossible 20 years ago. Absolutely. We mentioned the zipline drones earlier. They use computer vision to navigate and deliver vital blood supplies and vaccines to remote clinics in Africa. That is incredible, one life-saving technology. AlphaZero learning chess from scratch in 4 hours, medical AIs identifying melanomas from photographs with accuracy rivaling human dermatologists. These are real, tangible triumphs of deep learning.
But the critical question we have to ask, the question the book forces us to confront, is this: is deep learning the final answer to artificial intelligence? Is it the architecture of the human mind? Or is it just a very useful statistical tool that has fundamentally hit a ceiling?
There's an analogy in the book that I absolutely love here. It quotes Aiken's laws of spacecraft design. You can't get to the moon by climbing successively taller trees. Deep learning, powered by ever-increasing amounts of data and faster chips, is essentially building a really, really tall tree.
That's a perfect visual.
It's impressive engineering. You can climb it, you get a great view, you feel like you're making vertical progress toward the sky, but it is never, ever going to reach orbit.
Because it lacks escape velocity. Deep learning is trapped in its training data. Underneath all the hype, a deep neural network is fundamentally a statistical engine. It learns surface correlations, not high-level abstract concepts.
What do you mean by that, practically?
Well, when a deep learning system looks at millions of pictures of dogs, it isn't learning what a dog is. It doesn't know that a dog is a mammal, that it breathes air, that it has a biological history, that it likes to chase balls. It is simply adjusting millions of mathematical weights to learn the specific statistical arrangement of pixels, the edges of fur, the curve of a snout that statistically correlate with the human-provided labeled dog.
And relying purely on statistical correlation without any causal understanding leads to ridiculous, sometimes dangerous errors. The book brings up a researcher named Tyler Vaudergan who wrote a brilliant book called Spurious Correlations. He demonstrates how, if you just crunch enough data, you can find perfect statistical correlations between entirely unrelated things.
Oh, his examples are legendary. The most famous one is a graph showing a perfect decade-long statistical correlation between the per capita consumption of cheese in the United States and the number of people who died by becoming tangled in their bed sheets.
It's so funny. The graphs line up perfectly. It's uncanny. As cheese consumption goes up, bedsheet tangling deaths go up. As cheese goes down in a given year, bedsheet deaths go down. Now, any human being looks at that graph and immediately knows this is absolute nonsense. Eating cheddar cheese does not cause your blankets to spontaneously strangle you in your sleep. It's a coincidence.
Right. But a deep learning system struggles to tell the difference between the spurious correlation and a genuine causal correlation, like pushing the gas pedal causes the car to accelerate. To the algorithm, they are both just lines on a graph moving in tandem, a matrix of numbers going up together. Without an underlying model of cause and effect, deep learning is completely blind to the why of the world. It only knows the what.
This blindness is what leads to the brittleness and opacity we see in these systems. Neural networks are often described as black boxes, or as the book puts it, a massive pile of linear algebra. You feed millions of images into one side, the system stirs the math through dozens of hidden layers, adjusting weights and biases, and answers pop out the other side. But you can't easily look inside that matrix and understand why it made a specific decision.
And because it's an opaque black box of statistics, you can't impart basic overarching rules to it. You can't just open up the code of a deep learning image recognizer and type a single line of logic that says, by the way, objects cannot teleport and apples fall down, not up, due to gravity.
It won't understand it.
No, the architecture doesn't accept symbolic rules like that. It has to learn every single physical interaction from scratch purely through data distribution. It has to see millions of apples falling to statistically guess that the next one will fall too.
Which leads to more hallucinations. Because if the statistics in the training data are skewed, the AI's reality is skewed. There's an example in the book where an AI is shown a photo of two smiling women. They're standing outdoors on a sidewalk chatting on their cell phones. The AI analyzes the pixels, runs its linear algebra through its hidden layers, and outputs the caption, "A woman talking on a cell phone while sitting on a bench."
Let's analyze why it failed. It completely hallucinated a bench that isn't anywhere in the photograph, and it missed one of the women entirely. Why? Because in its massive training database, photos of women talking on cell phones outdoors statistically correlate highly with benches. People sit on benches when they talk on the phone in parks.
So it just guessed.
Yes, the AI didn't actually see a bench in the pixels. It statistically guessed a bench should be there based on historical co-occurrence.
It's basically an advanced autocomplete. It's just predicting the next most likely word or pixel based on history, not analyzing the reality in front of it. So if deep learning is just a tall tree and throwing more data at it won't fix its fundamental lack of comprehension, what does the rocket to the moon look like? What is the escape velocity?
That is the core of the solution. To break through the plateau, the AI industry needs a complete paradigm shift. We have to move away from purely statistical correlations and build AI that possesses a rich cognitive model of the world. In short, we need to do the incredibly hard work of teaching machines common sense.
Common sense. It sounds so folksy, but it's the holy grail. It's the thing that is so obvious to humans we don't even realize we're using it until a machine lacks it. To explain what a rich cognitive model looks like in practice, the book uses a brilliant example from the classic Stanley Kubrick movie, Spartacus.
It's a perfect illustration of human common sense versus machine literalism. In the climax of the movie, the Romans have captured the slave army and demand to know which one of them is the raw leader, Spartacus. Spartacus, wanting to save his men, stands up to turn himself in. But before he can, his friend stands up and shouts, "I am Spartacus," and then another man stands up, "I am Spartacus," until hundreds of men are standing, all claiming to be him.
It's such a powerful scene, and when a human watches that scene, we instantly emotionally understand exactly what is happening.
Yeah.
We know that every single man standing up, except the real one, is lying. We know why they are lying, to protect their leader and confuse the Romans. We know they're risking execution to do so. We feel the profound solidarity, the defiance, and the sacrifice of that moment.
Now run that scene through a current state-of-the-art multimodal AI. It processes the audio, it hears the phrase, "I am Spartacus." It counts 500 instances of the statement. Its statistical output, its literal interpretation, would likely be, there are 500 people named Spartacus in this scene.
Wow, it just flattens it.
Completely. It misses the layered social, physical, and psychological context. It has transcribed the data perfectly and understood absolutely nothing.
So how do we give AI that context? How do we program solidarity and deception? The authors propose that building common sense requires grounding AI in 3 foundational pillars, drawing heavily on the philosophy of Immanuel Kant. The 3 pillars are time, space, and causality.
Let's dive deeply into these because this is the actual roadmap for the future of the field. First, time. For an AI to understand the world, it needs a framework for how events unfold sequentially and what their limits are. It isn't just about reading timestamps on data points.
It's about the irreversibility of physics, right? Like if you have a robot pouring a glass of wine, A purely data-driven robot might just mimic the arm motions it saw in a training video. But a robot with a cognitive model of time understands that the cork must come out of the bottle before the wine can be poured. The sequence is causal and irreversible. You can't pour the wine and then remove the cork.
Exactly. Time also involves understanding the typical limits and durations of events. The book uses the Michael Jordan example. If you read a news story about Michael Jordan, you inherently know that even as a professional athlete at the absolute peak of his career, he didn't play basketball 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Great, he had to sleep.
Humans understand that events like playing a game, eating a meal, or sleeping have natural durations and boundaries. And AI processing text needs this temporal framework to interpret stories sensibly. Otherwise, it might deduce that an NBA player physically resides on a basketball court forever.
Okay, so that's time. The second pillar is space. This is about understanding the physical properties of objects, artifacts, and humans in 3 dimensions. A robot needs to know that a glass will shatter if dropped on tile, but not if dropped on a pillow.
It needs to know that an object placed inside a closed container cannot just magically teleport out of it.
Right. It needs to know that 2 solid physical objects cannot occupy the exact same space at the exact same time.
But the third pillar is perhaps the most complex, the most vital, and the hardest to program. Causality. The why of the world. To explain how deep this goes, let's unpack a story from the book, taken from the Little House on the Prairie series, specifically about the character Almanzo.
Yes, the Almanzo story. We need to break this down in extreme detail because it perfectly illustrates the invisible processing our brains do. So in the story, Almanzo finds a lost pocketbook on the ground containing a huge amount of money, like $1,500. He knows it belongs to an aggressive, deeply unpleasant man named Mr. Thompson. Almanzo walks up to Mr. Thompson and simply asks him a 5-word question. Did you lose a pocketbook?
To a human reader, that one sentence, "Did you lose a pocketbook?" triggers a massive, instantaneous cascade of causal inferences. It relies on what developmental psychologists call theory of mind, the ability to attribute mental states, beliefs, intents, and knowledge to oneself and others, and to understand that others have beliefs that are different from one's own.
Let's track the mental states involved here because there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
First, as a reader, you know that before Almanzo asked the question, Mr. Thompson did not know he had lost his wallet. If he knew, he would be frantically looking for it.
Right. Then, hearing the question causes a physical action. Mr. Thompson checks his pockets. The physical act of finding an empty pocket changes his mental state. He now knows he lost it. His knowledge state has shifted based on new evidence.
Then we anticipate his emotional causality. We know Mr. Thompson will initially feel blind panic upon realizing the money is gone. Then he will feel intense relief when he realizes Almanzo has it, and then joy when he sees all the money is still there.
But the causality goes even deeper into social dynamics. The reader also understands why Almanzo framed the question that way. Almanzo asks, "Did you lose a pocketbook?" delicately, rather than saying, "I found your money," because he wants to establish the loss before presenting the item, ensuring he isn't accused of stealing the money out of the man's pocket. If Mr. Thompson accuses him, Almanzo will be insulted.
All of that, the tracking of who knows what, how knowledge changes over time, emotional reactions, physical actions, social etiquette, all of that is intuitively parsed by a human reading a 5-word question. Current AI cannot even begin to track those layered mental states. It just sees the words lose and pocketbook.
Which naturally leads to the engineer's question. If we know exactly what common sense looks like, if we can map out theory of mind, why don't we just program it in? Why don't we just build a massive Wikipedia-style database of every single causal fact, every physical rule, and have the AI reference it?
It sounds so logical. Just type out all the rules. If a person loses a wallet, they are sad. If they find it, they are happy. But the book details how attempts to do this have been spectacular failures. There was a real project called ConceptNet, which attempted to crowdsource a massive database of common-sense facts from the public to feed into an AI.
The problem they ran into is that human knowledge is incredibly messy, fuzzy, and context-dependent. When you try to boil the real world down to rigid Boolean database links, the logic shatters. For example, ConceptNet had a relational link that said, "Person is at location restaurant."
Which sounds completely true. People eat at restaurants. But a logical AI reads that as a universal absolute rule. Does it mean you can find any specific person at a restaurant 24/7? Does it mean there is always at least one person in every restaurant at all times, even when it's closed? The rigid database can't handle the probabilistic, fuzzy nature of real life.
It gets even worse, and frankly comical, when the logic compounds. ConceptNet contained the factual link, cake used for satisfy hunger, True. And it also contained the categorical link, cook ISA person, also true.
Oh, no. I see where this logic is going.
Yes.
Oh.
So an AI trying to reason with these hard-coded facts might look at a scenario involving a cook and a cake and logically deduce that since a cook prepares things to satisfy hunger, and a cook is a physical entity, the cook is also meant to be eaten to satisfy hunger.
Because it just follows the graph.
Exactly. It's too rigid. You cannot mathematically hard-code every single exception, context, and nuance of human life into a database. The book argues we need a neurosymbolic architecture, a system that combines the learning power of neural networks with the rule-based logic of symbolic AI to acquire common sense fluidly, abstracting rules and applying them flexibly.
The ultimate test of this flexible common sense is open-ended planning. Let's look at cooking. If you look up a recipe for scrambled eggs, it might literally just say, beat eggs, keep butter in pan, pour in eggs.
A human reads that and effortlessly fills in dozens of unstated prerequisite steps. You know, you have to walk to the fridge, open the door, take the eggs out of the carton, crack the eggs on the side of the bowl, throw away the shells, put the pan on the stove, turn the stove on, and use a spatula to stir them. The recipe author assumes you share their common sense regarding the physics of eggs and stoves.
But an AI literalist, without common sense, reads that recipe and fails catastrophically. It might put whole, uncracked eggs into a bowl, beat the hard shells with a whisk, put a cold pan on the kitchen counter, put a whole wrapped stick of butter in it, and pour the shattered egg mess over the top. Because the recipe didn't explicitly state to crack the eggs, remove the wrapper from the butter, or turn on the heat.
Humans handle vague, underspecified instructions seamlessly because our common sense fills in the blanks. Until machines can do the same, we cannot trust them with complex, open-ended tasks in our homes, our hospitals, or our workplaces.
And trust is really the ultimate issue here. When we start giving these systems real physical and societal power, common sense isn't just a matter of efficiency or getting the eggs right. It's a matter of absolute safety and ethics.
This is a brilliant connection that is often missed in the tech industry. You cannot have ethical AI without common sense AI. The two are inextricably linked. You can't program a moral compass into a machine that doesn't understand physics or causality.
Let's use a stark example. Suppose you have a highly capable humanoid robot working in your home. Common sense, specifically the physics of space, gravity, and biology, tells the robot that if it accidentally drops a human being out of a third-story window, the human will accelerate at 9.8 meters per second squared, hit the concrete, and suffer fatal trauma.
But physics itself doesn't care if the human dies. Gravity has no morality. It is human values that must be programmed into the robot to tell it that killing the human is a negative outcome and must be avoided at all costs. But those ethical values are completely useless if the robot doesn't first possess the common sense to predict the physical outcome of the action before taking it. Ethics require anticipation, and anticipation requires an accurate causal model of the world.
Okay, but when we talk about AI safety and ethics, my mind immediately goes to the sci-fi doomsday scenarios. You hear massive tech figures panicking on podcasts and in interviews. Elon Musk has famously said that working on AI is summoning the demon. And then there's the philosopher Nick Bostrom, who came up with the famous paperclip maximizer thought experiment.
Right, the paperclip maximizer. The idea is that if you build a superintelligent AI and give it the singular, seemingly harmless goal of manufacturing paperclips as efficiently as possible, it will eventually realize that humans are made of atoms, and it will destroy the human race and the entire universe to harvest our atoms to make more paperclips, because you didn't explicitly tell it not to kill us.
Exactly, the Terminator scenario, but instead of Skynet wanting to rule the world, it just wants office supplies. So, with all this talk of brittleness and lack of common sense, should we be terrified of the paperclip apocalypse? Is superintelligence going to kill us by accident?
It's a fascinating philosophical debate, but Marcus and Davis push back hard on this narrative in the book. They argue that these fears of a malevolent, omnipotent superintelligence are actually a distraction. They divert our attention from the actual, immediate, highly unglamorous dangers we face today. We are not facing a superintelligence problem. We are facing what they call an AI interregnum, or AI adolescence.
AI adolescence. I love that term. It perfectly captures the vibe. It's like a teenager who just got their driver's license, has a sports car with a ton of horsepower, but their frontal lobe, the part of the brain responsible for risk assessment and long-term consequences, Hasn't fully developed yet.
Precisely. We have built machines and equipped them with immense power and autonomy. We have algorithms controlling electrical grids, navigating multi-ton vehicles at 70 miles an hour, sorting our news feeds, and deciding who gets a mortgage or who gets parole. But these machines have absolutely zero understanding of the societal or physical consequences of their actions.
It's the toddler with a loaded gun scenario. The danger isn't that the toddler is evil and plotting world domination. The danger is that the toddler is immensely powerful in that moment, but completely clueless about what the trigger actually does.
And how the tech industry handles this adolescence is critical. Right now, the reflex is to muzzle the AI, to put band-aids on it. If an image recognition software makes a horrifyingly racist categorization because of biased training data, the company's response is often just to hard-code a patch to block those specific words from the output. It's a game of whack-a-mole. You fix one edge case and 3 more pop up.
But muzzling AI with band-aids isn't a long-term fix. You can't patch your way to common sense. The core philosophy here is that the cure for risky AI is not restricted AI, it is better AI. We need to stop taking the shortcut of pure data crunching and do the incredibly hard, painstaking, decades-long work of building neurosymbolic systems that actually comprehend the physical and social reality they are operating in.
We need to build a framework where the AI can simulate the results of its actions in a causal model, understand the human context, apply ethical values to that simulation, and then make a decision. That is the only way to bridge the AI chasm. It's the only way to build artificial intelligence we can genuinely trust.
Which leaves us with a truly provocative thought to mull over as we watch the headlines roll in. We spend so much time looking over our shoulders, waiting for Skynet to wake up, looking out for the robot uprising, terrified of a superintelligence that outsmarts us. But what if the real turning point for humanity isn't a robot war at all? What if the most profound moment in human history is incredibly quiet?
What if the ultimate milestone, the true sign that we have succeeded, is simply the day a computer can sit down, read a simple children's book like the Almanzo story, genuinely understand why the characters feel sad or happy or relieved, and then turn around and explain that emotional journey back to you?
That leap from a machine that just calculates probabilities and pixel weights to a machine that genuinely understands the human experience in the physical world, that is the true final frontier of AI.
It's a massive, monumental challenge, perhaps the hardest engineering problem in human history. But as the roadmap lays out, it's the only viable path forward.
And that wraps up our deep dive for today. If you found this exploration of AI's blind spots and the quest for common sense as fascinating as we did, do not forget to subscribe to the Decode Deep Dive channel right now so you never miss an analysis like this.
And we really want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Have you personally experienced the gullibility gap with an AI recently? Did a chatbot, an automated customer service system, or a driving assist feature fool you or frustrate you with its intense, brittle, literal-mindedness? Let us know your stories.
Finally, we urgently recommend you go buy the book Rebooting AI, Building Artificial Intelligence We Can Trust. Support the authors, Gary Marcus and Ernest Davis, because mastering these critical AI trust issues is something we all need to do as this technology infiltrates our daily lives. Don't just read the headlines, understand the mechanics.
Read it, understand it, and be prepared for the actual future of technology.
The next time you're cruising down the highway and you see that self-driving car in the lane next to you, remember, the goal isn't just a machine that can see the white lines on the road. The goal is a machine that actually understands what it means to drive. Thanks for listening.